General James Jones is a retired United States Marine Corps four-star general. He was commander of the U.S. European Command and Supreme Allied Commander Europe. He served as the National Security Advisor to President Barack Obama and as the United States Special Envoy for Middle East Security. General, thanks for doing this with us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
There have been dramatic developments in Iran, to say the least. President Trump described it as the 12-day war, and the United States kind of dipped its toe in the combat pool. Where do we go from here? How do things unfold from this point forward?
Well, I think there will be a period of assessment with regard to, what eventually the world will conclude with regard to the efficacy of the strikes and what it did to the nuclear program. But beyond that, I think the next thing to watch for is what the people of Iran do, because there's never been a time where the regime was at its weakest. Its proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis, are also in a weakened state. And it'll be interesting to see what the people of Iran decide to do with regard to how they're governed and what they hope their future will be.
You mentioned we have to wait and see with the nuclear. Some in both Israel and the United States have said this is an ideal time, especially in the Trump administration. This is an ideal time to negotiate diplomatically with Iran because of that weakened state and because of the weakened state of their nuclear program. This is the ideal time to negotiate the future, or lack thereof, of any nuclear program. Do you agree with that?
I do. We've created a situation where, as I said before, I don't think there's been a time in the last 20 or 30 years where Iran has been in as weakened a state. They virtually have no friends. Even the ones that we thought were their friends didn't really stand up for them. So they're in a real trick right now with regard to what their future is. And I would think that the last several years have seen mounting popular unrest inside Iran. Last year was amazing in terms of the number of demonstrations. And a lot of their evil leadership has been eliminated. And so there isn't a whole lot that I think the regime can hold on to. And I think the people of Iran are certainly want, and I think are deserving of a better future and a better government, more democracy and the like. So, but again, I think we need to wait this out a little bit and see what happens.
Even if the nuclear capabilities have been destroyed or damaged, set back for sure, the current regime has a lot of other issues that are of concern. They have an abysmal human rights track record. Just in the last year, the numbers I have are 1,350 executions there, some of them for seemingly minor violations. There have been proxy groups all over the region which have upset Yemen, Saudi, Lebanon, Israel, Syria, the list goes on and on. So does the United States now, we heard President Trump talk in terms of regime change can equal chaos, keeping in mind all those past grievances, all that past instability and the ongoing executions and instability, can the United States embrace and believe any negotiations with the existing regime?
From my standpoint, I would say it's highly doubtful, but they're in a position now where they may not have the same choices that they've had over the last several presidencies of the United States, where appeasement has been, unfortunately, one of the cornerstones of our policy towards Iran, and that has proven to be just a failure. We just have to say it. President Trump, to his credit, came in and said, this is my vision, this is my plan, and if you do this, we'll be at the table. If you don't come to the table, this is probably going to happen. And so I think the actions that he's taken, the Iranian regime understands very well that there is more of the same thing if they don't come to the table. So we'll wait and see. I'm very interested in seeing what the reaction in the people is once this settles down a little bit.
The president talked about regime change and chaos, and he cited Libya and Iraq as examples. Could you have regime change and without chaos in Iran? And if so, what would that look like?
Yes, I think you could. I think there's always a possibility that there could be some chaos. I mean, particularly if it's a violent overthrow of the regime, there's going to be some difficult days. But doesn't mean that they can't come to an agreement on how they want to be governed. It just all depends on who the people are that present themselves. Are they willing to embrace the democratic model, which organizations like the NCRI are more than happy to do, led by a woman named Mrs. Rajavi. They are nonviolent. They are pro-democracy, pro-Jeffersonian democracy, actually. And if the people embrace that kind of future and believe in it, then some good things could happen. One of the problems with Iraq, I thought, was that at the outset of our penetration, our military activity in Iraq, we said from the outset, we do not do nation building. This is not a nation building thing. Think what would have happened in Europe if we'd said that after we defeated Germany or Japan, or even South Korea, which is now the 10th or 11th largest GDP in the world. If you're going to use the armed forces of the United States, you kind of buy into what happens next a little bit by association. Now, I think the administration is absolutely correct. We should not have a land war in Iran. We should not, participate in any kind of regime overthrow. But the people themselves will have a big voice in this. And if you look at the pattern of demonstrations over the last few years, the regime is wildly unpopular in Iran. And the people have found ways to express themselves that they are interested in a democratic solution to their problems. And if that happens, I think that will be historical in terms of, for the first time in a long time, having a Middle East with a real chance at peace.
You mentioned the NCRI and the MEK. Sometimes in American media or in EU media, those organizations are portrayed as a violent history or not a viable alternative. You have interacted with those folks. You know the people involved personally. What's the real view, your assessment of the NCRI?
Ambassador Link Bloomfield, who's a very good friend of mine, has done what I consider to be the most scholarly work on what the history of the MEK is and NCRI. And his conclusions have been dramatic on the side of a organization that is nonviolent and is dedicated to a free and democratic Iran. They have plans to do that in the event that they have the opportunity. They are led by a woman named Mrs. Rajavi, who is the unquestioned leader of the NCRI. They have annual conventions, generally in Paris, supported by the French government. And 50,000, 60,000 people in the streets as peaceful demonstrators in support of a democratic Iran. those kinds of activities lead me to believe that there's great potential once the people of Iran decides they've had enough of the current regime. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But from a moral standpoint, the atrocities that have been perpetrated on innocent people in Iran over the years are just beyond the pale. And I don't know how anybody ever brings themselves to trust a regime like that to continue to be in power.
What kind of a statement does it make to the people of Iran and to the region as a whole if an organization like the NCRI comes forward and you have female leadership? If they end up being the leadership of a nation, that in and of itself is a statement. What is that statement?
Well, I think the NCRI wants to bring about a condition where people can have free and fair elections regardless of who presents themselves. And having talked to Mrs. Rajavi and the leadership of NCRI for a number of years, I know that they are dedicated to doing what they can to bring that opportunity to the people of Iran. I think in their plans they have a 6-month period where at the end of 6 months there will be a free and fair elections. The Constitution will be written. The 10-point plan that they live by is something that no Western democracy can object to. It's the way we live. It's what we believe in: free, fair elections, human rights, a non-nuclear Iran. All of that is postulated up front. So if something like that happens, and we'll have to wait and see if it does, but if something like that happens, I think the future of Iran could be very bright. But that's something that's going to have to come from within, not from any external power or land war or anything like that.
Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah of Iran, has appeared recently in news wherever he can. Fox News referred to him recently as the Crown Prince of Iran. And he has called on Iranian commanders to join him and making some sort of change in Iran under his leadership. Other than his DNA, other than the fact that he is the son of a former ruler, what qualifications does he have to lead his nation?
None that I know of. I mean, he is the son of the Shah who was overthrown. And it is inconceivable to me that the people of Iran would want to return to that kind of autocracy, having just hopefully someday eliminated the current one. And so I think that he is, I don't think he has much of a following. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. And but he figures out a way to interject himself as a viable solution, which would surprise me greatly if that turned out to be the case.
You've been very careful, and the Trump administration has been very careful to say, it's not our role to create regime change, but they see some opportunity here. They see some advantages to that. What should U.S. policy be when we talk about regime change, or at least the opposition activities in Iran?
Well, I think there are some legitimate organizations. The NCRI is the one that I know the best, and I think is the one that has the most viable solutions to the future of Iran. They are extremely well organized. They're led by a woman, as you pointed out. They believe in the democratic principles, the principles that we live by, and I think I hope the day will come when organizations like that will have, under peaceful conditions, an opportunity to present themselves to the people and run free and fair election to see who the next what kind of government the people of Iran want to live by. I think the frequent representations of MEK and NCRI are historically off base as a result of the work that the ambassador has done, which are scholarly works and based in historical fact as opposed to word of mouth conjecture about the MEK. I'm interested in seeing what happens in the next few months. First, we have to do the assessment on what damage has been done to the nuclear program. And then I think the U.S. administration should participate in a leadership role with obviously the Israeli problem with Hamas and the Palestinians still is not resolved completely, but there is a good opportunity, I think, for something good to come of that as well.
Final question, and it's on that same topic, is when we look at the democratic opposition there in Iran, what has the United States' shortcomings been in relation to them, and how do we solve that?
I think the shortcoming has been that going back several administrations that we've pursued what I would call the politics of appeasement. We believed that the regime, despite all of its atrocities, and I go back to 1983 with the attack on the Marines battalion that was in one building and killed over 241 Marines. As directed by General Soleimani, who the Trump administration in the first term eliminated, right, which was a great thing. As a matter of fact, President Trump on national television mentioned my name, and he assumed I was a Democrat because I worked for President Obama, but he invited me to come back into the Republican Party as a result of my support for that attack. I am neither a Republican or a Democrat. I practice the military, what the U.S. military role of being nonpartisan on most scores. So anyway, I think that the Trump administration has done some really good work here and has set the stage for what happens next. And phase 3, phase 1 is the negotiations, or trying to get negotiations. Phase 2 is the kinetic strike. And phase 3 is what do the people want in Iran? And to the extent that political groups rise up and they're democratic and non-Shah-like, I think that's a good thing. And I think we should recognize that and do what we can to be encouraging and helpful once the regime falls.
General, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it, Tim.